In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
I'm like lucky I could talk today because I couldn't talk yesterday. I sounded very gravelly.
Are you sick?
Yes, I've been sick for over a week now.
God, yeah, you might have had what I had that lasted for like 3 weeks. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
Though. Okay, well, I'll kick things off. Welcome to Doomed to Fail, the podcast where me and Taylor just talk about how tired we are until one of us will eventually die.
Yes.
Not soon.
Not soon, but who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows these days?
Taylor is joining us from Las Vegas. I'm in Austin as usual. I was just in Las Vegas, so we miss each other once again.
We did.
But we're going to see each other in Palm Springs in about 2 weeks, give or take. So,
yeah.
Taylor, how are you doing today?
Good. I just drove here, so it was like a 4-hour drive. The kids did really good in the car. It was just the 3 of us, and I'm good. They're playing with my mom. They brought all their toys. They've already made a huge mess. I've already eaten a ton of snacks. I don't know if you just like eat constantly at your parents' house, but like my mom's house, I'm like, what can I have for a snack? So I've already eaten a ton of snacks.
It's always carbs with my parents. My mom, since she retired, just bakes cakes and pies all day.
Amazing.
And I'll get there and she's like, well, I just created a pumpkin cheesecake. Do you want to try it? I'm like, well, that sounds unique. Yeah, I'll try that. And it's like, oh, and by the way, here's a chocolate cake as well if you want to try it. It's like thing after thing after thing. You always gain weight when I'm at home, but I think that's supposed to happen.
I think it's supposed to. I just had half a box of Triscuits and some cheese and salami, so I'm ready to go. Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So we have our 2 stories today that are red flaggy relationships that we're obviously going to be doomed to fail that nobody paid attention to. I'm on the true crime side. Taylor, you're on the historical side. Who goes first this week? I keep forgetting.
I think it's you.
Me. Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us your drink and then I'll tell my drink and then we can segue into the true crime.
Cool. So this week I have a sore throat, like I told you, so I really should be hydrating. I am hydrating. I'm drinking water in real life, but my drink is like a watery ale from like a time when water was not available, so all you drank was beer.
That sounds like my time to be alive.
You know what I mean? When like water was like brown and like had malaria, so you just like drink beer. But it's not like you were drinking like a IPA constantly.
If we have any pathologists that listen to this show, can you please let us know if you can catch malaria by drinking it?
I think you can. That's how you get malaria. It's like in the water. Or is that cholera? Cholera is in the water. Malaria is in the
mosquitoes. I think they have to hypodermically. Yeah, there you go. Cholera. Perfect. So my drink is a little bit unique this week because our person is kind of unique this week. My drink is going to be, it's got to be alcoholic. I'm going to make it a little bit alcoholic just for the hell of it. But it mostly is comprised of rabbit's blood mixed with vodka. Yeah. So I don't actually know how well those blend together, but I would imagine that the rabbit blood would neutralize.
Oh, you don't? I'm sorry. You don't know how well those go together? What kind of sommelier are you?
I know, right? It probably would look like wine a little bit.
I'm gonna throw up.
But I would assume that the blood would neutralize the harshness of the vodka, or the vodka might neutralize the harshness of the blood. I don't really know. I bet it would be really salty though.
I'm imagining I don't know anything about blood, but I'm imagining it's like, you know, when you drink an Irish car bomb and you have to drink it really, really fast where it curdles.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's kind of one of those.
Okay. Well, great. I'm excited to learn more about this because that's disgusting.
Yeah, listeners, go ahead and pour yourself a nice steaming glass of rabbit's blood and let's get going. So the person I'm covering today, his name is John Alexander Lawson. Taylor, do you know who that is?
Does not ring a bell right now.
Okay. You might better know him by the name that he legally changed to in 2002, Pazuzu Algarad.
I don't know who that is.
No way, you don't know Pazuzu?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, this is
I feel like I would remember that.
This is gonna be a fun one.
Okay, I'm excited.
One thing about this case I found interesting is that the reports about what happened here seemed way, way more focused on Pazuzu as a person than the crimes he actually committed.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like such a freak show, like such an anomaly that people were kind of swept away by him as a person. And because of that, things like dates, motives, details around the crime, even the ages of the victims were kind of hard to come by. So, for example, in some reports that I read, they say that the victims are 31 and 32 years old. Others say that they were 37, 36 years old. Some say he was arrested for accessory to murder in 2012 before he was arrested on first-degree murder charges. Others say that murder happened in 2020. So, like, details were kind of hard to come by. The only thing that's actually 100% for certain is the search warrant that I read, because that was generated by the police, obviously, and so those have hard dates on them. I'm going to get to the search warrant later on in the story, but just highlighting the fact that this guy and his story are kind of hard to nail down exactly what happened and when they happened, but we're going to do our best here.
Okay, cool.
Given what I just said about what a character this guy was, hopefully some of you guys have already heard of him. If you have, you've mostly heard of him because of his appearance being striking in the most nightmarish way possible.
Okay, when should I Google him? Should I Google him now?
Just wait.
Okay.
Yeah.
You tell me when.
I'll tell you when.
Okay.
There's so much to say about this guy, but I'll start by pointing out several red flags. So you're probably not going to like me saying this, Taylor, because you're dramatically more woke than I am. But one of the biggest red flags here I want to call out is stereotyping. So, Taylor, now would be the time I would like you to take a look at Pazuzu's pictures. Pazuzu is spelled Pazuzu. Don't say anything.
When can I say something?
Did you see it?
I did. Well, I see two and I have several thoughts.
Why don't I ask you some questions, then you can share your thoughts.
Okay.
Let me ask you, when you look at a picture of that guy, you haven't heard his voice, you don't really know what his aura is, being in his presence, or, you know, if you look into his eyes and you think they're a window to the soul, which I know you don't, you have no idea what he's like. But just looking at his pictures, is that a guy you would want to spend any time with?
No, absolutely not.
Would you want to do drugs with him?
No. Oh, if I say no because I fear I would die because he does harder drugs than I do.
So is there any chance if he invited you over to his house, you would go to his house with him one night?
No, absolutely not. It would smell terrible and there'd be bed bugs.
Okay, describe what your thoughts are now.
So I see in some pictures he has a shaved head and he has a lot of face tattoos, which is like, I'm actually whatever. Face tattoos are fine. He does have a big tattoo, it looks like, on his arm that just says Satan, which makes me laugh. So that's hilarious. But then other ones he has dreadlocks. I don't know if we're stereotyping, but white men should not have dreadlocks. It's gross.
Okay. I'm going to, per usual, we're gonna combat a little bit on a specific topic you just called out, which is face tattoos. But let me get into the stereotyping piece of this.
I'm not like everyone should get face tattoos, but I'm like, it's not the end of the world.
Sure.
Continue.
I'll continue, and we'll decide that. My point around stereotypes. So, in today's climate and culture, it's not really super appropriate to say what I'm about to say, which is that stereotypes and prejudices actually exist for a reason. They do. They're evolutionary. So as humans evolved into what we are today, the genes that were passed down were the genes of those who could immediately identify danger and had the ability to avoid it. So I read a chapter on this treatise, this like thesis study on psychology. So the book itself is the Cambridge Handbook of the Psychology of Prejudices. The chapter I read on this was chapter 2, titled Evolutionary Approaches to Stereotyping and Prejudices. So if you want to check that out, you can find it. You can go to the Cambridge's website, and they publish all this stuff on their website. So you can actually go read it right there. And it really explains this concept. It has a lot of details in there, and it breaks down prejudice and stereotypes into different categories like race, age, sex, kinship, stuff like that. But the simplest way I can kind of sum most of it up was this quote that I read there, which is, this is a quote: by viewing a particular individual as being like typical members of some group, one need not engage in more effort and lengthy attempts to understand him or her as a unique individual.
That's amazing. Well, is that it? Is that that quote?
That's the end of that quote. That's not the end of my rant.
Okay, well, if I may, right now, I feel like fair if I'm thinking about like January 6th insurrectionists. I don't need to know their life to know the way I feel about them. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense to me. And then also today and next week, I'm going to talk a lot about the American experience and how we got here. And there is some stereotyping involved. So some history of stereotyping involved in a way that I think connects.
Well, we have a through line.
Look at us.
That rarely happens.
It does not. It happens all the time.
Yeah, it's true.
We're very
So
talented.
So all this to say that all this is kind of evolutionary, and we are by nature recoiled or drawn to certain people. And if you don't listen to that part of your brain that tells you to recoil, you're basically going to end up like the people that we are talking about on this story. So, one time, you remember Dan Walmsley, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so did I tell you how me and my ex-wife accidentally went to his house for like a open
Yeah.
house?
Yes.
And then we like fell in love with the house. It was like I forgot where it was. It was like
I know. Yeah.
Cypress Hill or something. It was in this. It was a part of LA that was definitely not gentrified, but it was like kind of almost close to being there at that
Yeah.
time. It's sort of been like 2016 or 15, and I remember we were like in love with this house, but there's like an apartment complex next to it, and this guy came out of the complex like directly next to the house, got in his truck that was parked in front of my car, and he was just like covered in face tattoos, and I was just like, I'm not living here. I don't give a shit what the house costs. Like, I'm not living next to this dude. And I don't know. To your point, like maybe this guy had a heart of gold. I don't know, but I don't need to know anything more about you. I don't need to dive into your soul. Like none of that.
Yeah. I mean, if you have face tattoos, you're not making the statement, come talk to me.
Yeah, yeah. Like my general theory on it is like you chose to become a social outcast. So like, where's my obligation line trying to understand who you are? So you take a look at this guy Pazuzu, which I'm going to describe, which you just did, covered in this nonsensical, like prison tats, like homemade
Hmm.
tattoos on his face with dreadlocks as a white guy. And we're going to get to this a little bit later. He also shaved his teeth into points.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Like, do you really need
Ew.
to? And he's like, hey, come on over to my house. Let's do a bunch of meth. Like, why would you do that? Like, that's such an
Well,
obvious red flag.
there's yes, 100%. One thing about face tattoos, I have seen some beautiful like women, like the Maori women who have beautiful face tattoos, like indigenous face tattoos are cool. Um,
That's
and
so
then
different. We are
I
not
know,
talking about.
no, I
Okay.
know we're not. I just want to make it clear that's not what we're talking about. And then to actually, when you Google this guy, the first image is it says Pazuzu Algarad house debris removal. I'm clicking on it, but it's pretty much like shovels of garbage. So yes, I would not go to that house.
Yeah, we're definitely going. We're going into the house. We're not going into the house, but we're
Yeah,
gonna
like I
go
love
into it.
hoarders, but I'm not gonna go into a hoarder's house. No
Yeah,
bugs.
yeah. So one thing I wanted to highlight here again, this is not a love letter to prejudices. The same article that I just quoted, also there's a quote in there saying just because a behavior is an adaptation does not mean it's adaptive, i.e., beneficial to the possessor in modern environments. So
Hmm.
I'm not saying it's the best thing in the world, but again, if a guy who drinks rabbit blood and has face tattoos invites you over to his house, just say that as a
God,
sign to say no.
so much has happened in the last 10 minutes. I forgot about the rabbit blood.
Yeah, there you go. You gotta refill your steaming warm cup of rabbit
Great. I'm
blood.
glad you brought that back.
So the name itself, Pazuzu, is actually from ancient Babylon. It refers to a spirit, which is oftentimes regarded as a demon, who has the body of a man, the head of a lion or a dog, depending on who you're talking to, is talons for feet, wings, and a scorpion's tail.
Cool.
So Pazuzu was actually the demon that possessed Regan in the Exorcist movies. That was
Ooh.
yeah, that was like the claim to fame for Pazuzu. There's actually a ton of scholarly articles about Pazuzu's creation, the evolution, varying takes on how powerful of a demon he was, so on and so forth. You go to worldhistory.com, which is where I got a lot of my source information on
Hmm.
this demon, fictitious demon that this insane person uh named himself after. His last name, the last name that he took, Algarad, that's the Arabic word for Lord of the Locusts.
All right.
So that's the
Those
headspace.
individually, those are cool things.
It could have
But
been cooler if he didn't
I mean, I think maybe like disassociated from this person, they're cool. Ooh, I Googled just Pazuzu and you get that scary exorcist face.
yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. Apparently he was mostly a normal kid growing up. And around age 8 is when his mom put him in some sort of a mental institution because he was acting up and acting out. According to one of their neighbors and an early babysitter of Pazuzu, his mom was kind of a piece of shit who spent
Mm,
most of his childhood leaving him alone to go on dates and was basically constantly drunk.
that sucks.
So yeah, I can basically say she was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
If you I mean, if you look at like how he turned out, if you raise a kid like Pazuzu, who was normal by all accounts until basically the parents' separation and the mom going the route that she went, and
Hmm.
instead you spend all your time pursuing male validation rather than providing like enrichment activities for your kids, kind of a piece of shit. Like you're not like really doing your responsibilities as an adult.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you can go on dates, but you shouldn't leave your children alone and like abandon them,
Well, he was
or just
acting
like,
out because he was
or just
being
like to
abandoned.
yeah, or just like totally abandon them, which we're all for if you don't want to take care of them.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Well, at least you
drop
didn't
them off
kill
at a
him.
restaurant. Yeah,
At
that's
least
true.
you didn't kill. Yeah. Go to
I
an
mean, I
Applebee's.
guess. Yeah.
Who knows
Yeah. It's
what the right thing
complicated.
was to do here?
Complicated.
It's a little complicated. So I wrote this whole thing about. So you basically touched on everything I'm going to talk about here, but I wrote all about his appearance. Again, white guy with long dreadlocks. I have no clue what the face tattoos are. I looked at them for hours and I can't make any sense out of any of them. And one of
Yeah.
them, the bald one that you pointed out, he also shaved his eyebrows, presumably to tattoo the fake eyebrow dots that you see on them.
Ew.
They just look like random symbols. Like they're not tribal. He has nothing to do with
Well,
indigenous.
no, yeah.
Yeah, and then to your point, he has the word Satan in all caps tattooed on one side along the entire length of his arm, which like I don't know, that one's kind of cool, I think.
That makes me laugh. That's funny.
He actually was high on meth one day whenever he decided to file his teeth into points, so there was that.
Oh my God, that's crazy. That have you ever seen when people get veneers that they have to do that first? Have you ever seen that? If you get like
No.
really like rich people, if they get like really, really fancy veneers, first the dentist literally has to file down their real teeth and then pop the veneers in and over it. And you're like, you just lost your real teeth.
What is a veneer?
Like very like a perfect tooth that you like put over your teeth. So like
Huh.
when someone has like a really perfect smile, like it's not real, it's like it's fake. Like
It's when you have jacked up teeth, basically.
yeah, you get them fixed.
Okay.
But to get them like like really expensive veneers, like it's like getting dentures, but you don't need them yet.
Just live
It's a
with
lot.
braces for a year.
Yeah, it's gross. Oh, also, I guess this is not a time for me to share this thought, but Invisalign is not invisible. I can see it. Everyone, America. I just want you to know. So right now, if you're like, oh, I have Invisalign, no one can see it. I can see it.
I don't really stare at people's mouths. I wouldn't even know if
It's
someone.
impossible not to see. It like makes your teeth look like they're fused together and it's full of spit and it's gross and I can see it. I mean, I get you redoing, but like just like let's not pretend it's visible. Keep going.
Okay.
Oh my
There
God,
you
it's gonna be a
there
5 hour long episode. I'm
I
so
know.
sorry.
I know.
God.
We're already
I just looked
30
at my
minutes in.
notes. I was writing my notes last night. I have 24 pages of notes and I don't even know if I have a story to tell. So I'm just so excited to get to mine too. So just keep going.
Okay. We're gonna soldier on.
Okay.
So Pazuzu lived in Clemens, North Carolina, which is a suburb of Winston-Salem, and I did hear his voice, and he does sound like a Southern hillbilly.
We are going to right outside. We're going to Winston-Salem.
No, we're not. We are
Isn't that where
going.
Jay is?
We're that is where Jay is, but their wedding is in Asheville, North
Okay.
Carolina. Yeah.
Whatever. We're going to North Carolina. Keep going.
I don't have the invite yet. Do you already have the invite?
I have to save the date.
Okay, good. I thought that he deliberately uninvited me. He like told me he's engaged and then like made a point not to send me the invite. So yeah, going back to Pazuzu, he's one of those guys who kind of like to freak people out. So apparently after 9/11, he would dress as a jihadist, like just one of those guys that wants to scare everybody. I think that's also partially why he went the whole satanic demonic route because in South
Scare
Carolina,
people.
everybody loves
Yeah.
Jesus, and he just walks around like a psychopath. Apparently, despite everything I said about stereotypes, a ton of people ignored the red flags, and his house was apparently chock full of kids who wanted to party and be in his presence. Yeah, I kind of equate him to Rasputin because he had this like dark vibe, mysterious vibe to him, and it kind of reminded me of Rasputin a little bit.
And if you're in that kind of person that's attractive to a certain point of time in your life, and so like being a kid, being a teenager, and wanting drugs.
Yeah.
That guy's cool.
Yeah, he was like an older guy though. Like he was in his like 30s.
Oh yeah, there's always that guy.
And he's
There's
living
always that guy.
And his mom lived in the house with him, and like she was just like he was like Cartman from South Park. Like you just like make his mom make him sandwiches and like go buy him beers. Like at 33 years old, like it was kind of
the meatloaf.
Yeah. I wrote down one of the guys who was interviewed was this guy named Crazy Dave Adams, who was one of his friends who would always go to his house. I'm just painting a picture of like the type of people that are there. This guy's sitting on this like disgusting couch getting interviewed by Vice. He's holding a beer can in one hand while he's smoking a cigarette with his shirt off. and he has all these just like trash tattoos that
Crazy
like
Dave.
crazy. He was definitely fit the name. He has the word insane in all caps tattooed like under his neck. Like that's a those are the people that we're talking about hanging out
That's
at
a
this
look.
house.
That's the thing. Yeah.
It's a look.
That's a
So
vibe.
I wrote down the house itself seemed to be its own entity. Anyone who went near the house would unanimously say it smelled awful and that people there
Yeah.
were regularly peeing and taking shits on the floor
Ew.
in the open.
But his mom was there?
She had her own room, and apparently she just did not leave that room.
All right, she's also a bad mother.
She's also
She has
a
her own
terrible
shit
mother.
going on. Yeah.
It's like those moms who are like, my son's my best friend. And it's like, you really need to yank the chain every now and then on your
My
kid.
son's my best friend, but he's 6. So keep
Well,
going.
yeah, that's slightly different. So there was also obviously like they would all talk about like how he would just constantly slit the throats of rabbits or cats that he would find and pour the blood all over him, or he would just like
Ew.
noose a cat and just hang it on a tree outside. Like he was
What?
invested in this lifestyle.
Yikes.
Okay, this is probably not going to be a surprise to any of you who've looked up this guy's pictures. He had a serious, serious problem with drugs and alcohol, and he also was reported to have schizophrenia.
No.
And he was supposed to be on medication.
It's a smidge. He didn't have a chance, really.
Yeah, he was fucked. Like he had no
Yeah.
chance.
He
I
had no
mean,
chance.
he had schizophrenia that was mostly untreated, and he was self-medicating by taking meth, acid, and alcohol, basically.
Yeah, there's no chance. Like he needs like professional help, and that does not sound like something that would ever have been like offered to him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, like I said, the mom was in the house, and I watched an interview with her, and like now, way after the fact. So Pazuzu's dead. Spoiler alert.
Oh.
And now the mom, when you hear her talking, she's just so nonchalant about it. It's like, oh, he was just a crazy kid, and this. It's like just this dissonance. I don't
What are you talking
understand
about?
it.
Yeah.
Like she laughed about how he like was kicked out of the second grade because he just stopped attending class. Like it was funny. Like not.
Second graders don't do that. You do that. Not like he's driving himself to school and not going.
That's actually a really good point. I didn't think about that.
You know, like I mean, like I get like a high schooler not going to school. That's like on their own volition, but a second grader can only go to school if you bring them to school.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. The house again, all of it except the mother's room was just wrecked.
Ugh.
There's actually a ton of footage of police body cams going inside the house. I love this. One of the officers on the body cam says, quote, "This guy's got a bad case of whatever he's got," which is like the most southern way of saying this guy's fucked up. Like he was just so nice about it.
You know what I watched this week that reminded me of that? Do you know the rapper Afro Man?
Yeah. I heard
Did you
about
watch
this.
the video of the cops in his house?
No, I didn't see it, but I heard about it.
It's pretty amazing. It's like he has his own security cameras. The cops went into his house to like find drugs and kidnapping victims, which makes no sense. And he was like, you know, and it's like, are you the song is like, are you gonna help me fix my door? Because they like broke down his door. And then there's like one cop who's like looking at a cake and he like stops and looks at the cake again. And like you wouldn't know who they were, except the cops sued him because they're embarrassed.
Because he used it in the video, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like you broke into his house for no reason and then just like looked through all of his stuff and he's like, "Did you find any children in my CDs?" Because they're going through all his CDs. It's really funny.
What a ludicrous. I bet his house was nice too.
It was so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Opposite of this.
Yeah, the opposite is so gross.
Yeah. So the house, obviously, there was shit everywhere. It kind of looked like an abandoned house with squatters that would be living
Yeah.
there. He had like a giant swastika painted on the living room ceiling. Like
Oh, gross.
everything was just spray painted. Apparently, he had a swastika tattoo also on his leg. But again, I don't even think he had any beliefs because I think he just did anything to shock people.
Right. It just wanted like people to have a reaction.
Rampant, untreated schizophrenia mixed with alcohol and drugs is what it was.
Yeah. No.
It's worth noting that when the crimes that we're going to discuss here in a moment came to light, the city just leveled the house because it would have cost them a fortune to make it up to code and livable. So
That sounds good.
So we're going to get into our second antagonist here, which was Pazuzu's girlfriend. Her name is Amber Birch, and she was present for at least one of the murders and helped hide the body of the first victim, which we're about to get into. She kind of reminds me of like a lost kid, although I'm using the word kid sparingly here because she was 24 years old, but when she met Pazuzu, he was 35. So the age disparity was kind of a thing, I think.
Yeah.
Amber would eventually plead guilty to second-degree murder, accessory after the fact to first-degree murder, and robbery with a dangerous weapon, and was sentenced to 39 years.
Wow.
Look, I don't think that she's innocent because I'm going to get into what they did together, but just choose your with wisely, you know? Like,
Yeah.
it's such a slippery slope. Like, if, okay, so my weird edge lord boyfriend beheads a rabbit in front of me. What's the whatever? We're just gonna bury a body next. Like it just feels like it turned into a very very slippery slope.
Cool. I mean, then how do you, yeah, that's scary. How do you
Yeah,
like it? And then, or is it like, are you like in a, I don't know, a thing, like in like a spiral then what happens?
I mean, yeah. Well, they were together for a long time because we're gonna get into this, but the crimes started, they originated in 2009, and these people weren't arrested until 2014. So like they were
Wow.
in deep. Yeah.
Wow.
So getting into the crimes, again, details are a little hard to come by. We don't know a ton about the motivations for these crimes, although the search warrant, once it was unsealed, did state something in there. I'll get into that, but mostly it's just random. It seems like it's kind of random. There could have just really not been a motive in this. We tend to look at this as a satanic and demonically possessed crime and just forget the fact that this guy was a drug addict and a schizophrenic. He could have made something up in his mind, like anything. Like he could have seen the guy on the couch and been like, "Ah, that's Jesus. I got to shoot him." You know?
Yeah, Satan isn't real. So I think that's also part of the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's making it up in whatever way that means, you know, there's making it up like intentionally to be like scare people, or he's making it up because he's having like a schizophrenic episode.
I think he's just doing it because he's antisocial.
Yeah.
So in October of 2014, the remains of two individuals were discovered in Pazuzu's backyard. The two were the bodies of Joshua Welzer and Tommy Walsh, who had both gone missing in 2009. So Joshua, again, the reports are different here. One of the reports said that he's 32 when he went missing. He went missing in July of 2009. Tommy was 31, and he went missing a few months later in October of 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, Joshua was shot in the living room and dragged to the basement, and Tommy was in the basement where he was shot and killed. So they were seemingly buried at the same time because their bodies were found in the same grave. So it's theorized that he took Tommy down to show him Joshua's body and then shot him once he showed him the body.
Was Joshua dead for months?
Yeah,
Ew.
yeah. The search warrant is going to go into a lot of detail about what he did, but when it's the house smells like it does, do you really notice a dead body
No,
rotting
that's
there
fair.
for months?
Yeah.
Some random dude took a dump in the living room, and yeah, you're probably gonna pay attention to that first. Joshua's former fiance reported him missing in 2009 and specifically named Pazuzu as who she thinks killed him. Apparently, this is the part that's a real curiosity with this case. Apparently, as early as 2010, the police had enough for a valid search warrant of the property, and they kind of almost sort of executed on it, but not really. It took another 5 years after this report was first brought to light and the evidence needed to search the house was realized that police actually went and did a full in-depth search of the house. It's worth noting that the search warrant itself was sealed, meaning it would not be made public, which is rare in and of itself, but
Yeah.
triply rare when the investigation and the sentencing is complete. So in 2017 is when the first time the judge unsealed the original search warrant, which was from like 2010. So it's been like 7 years that it finally got unsealed, and that's what I went through and I read. And really, what it talks about, what it shows is that they could have solved these crimes in months. Like, obviously, this guy's not a master criminal. He's clearly deranged and insane. Like, he's not like he wasn't going to get away with this. And police just didn't do their due diligence. In August of 2009, less than 1 month after Joshua's murder, a woman named Tarina Billings visited with the police and said that her father had visited Pazuzu's house and observed a dead body in the basement.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the father, this is the part that how he tried to cover this up. The father told his daughter that the body was covered in a plastic tarp and had cat litter and chlorine around it to help with the odor.
Both those things smell terrible. Ugh.
Yeah. He also was told by Pazuzu that he had shot the person 10 times, quote, because he was a snitch. It just seems like what you would say, right? Like, it's so, like almost cliche. He even he even knew that the body was buried in the backyard. Like he told him everything. He told him every detail he needed to get arrested. And this woman relayed all of that to the police. It's all
And
in
he
the
didn't do
warrant.
anything.
Well, it gets deeper. It goes even worse. It gets worse than that. So a month later, they also got an anonymous Crime Stopper tip saying the exact same thing from like another source. They don't know who it is, but it wasn't that the woman who initially told them. So police go to the house and they do like a basic search and find nothing. They talk to Pazuzu with not in custody, and he says, "I didn't do anything. I don't know anything about this. You know, whatever." Apparently, what happened was the police wanted to go get some like device that can identify objects underneath soil so they could see if there's a body there. The university was using it and they decided they're just going to execute the warrant without it, but they just like walked around the property, so they didn't actually notice anything because the house was dirty, whatever, but there was no body to be found because they're all in the backyard underground.
And they'd buried them like years before.
And then, yeah, years before, so like the grass already
Yeah,
grown
yeah.
over and so on. So in 2011, Pazuzu's mom finally goes to the sheriff's office and tells her that she heard a gunshot at her house and came down and saw Amber holding a rifle and Tommy on the ground, presumably dead. There's so much evidence that came to light around this. Like all these
Yeah.
people are just going to the police, like, please arrest this guy, like do anything.
Oh my God.
And they didn't do anything. So in 2014, that's when they finally came back to that original search warrant from 2010, when a woman named Dixie went to the police and provided a written statement. It was like 13 pages, all details of how she basically helped Amber, the girlfriend, dig a grave and dump two bodies in the backyard. She even specified exactly where in the backyard the graves were dug. So it was at this point they finally executed the warrant. They showed up and they found Joshua and Tommy's obviously completely decayed bodies.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So obviously Pazuzu gets arrested, and that's kind of where the story ends. What ended up happening was he ended up dying, presumably by suicide, while awaiting trial. Apparently, while he was at the first jail, which was in Forsyth County, it was reported by guards and inmates that he would keep biting himself with the sharpened teeth, try and kill himself.
Oh
And
my God.
because this jail didn't have the facility to deal with someone with like obvious extreme mental illness issues, they transferred him to another jail. And it was there that he was found unresponsive, completely bled out from self-inflicted wounds. But what's weird is they never found anything that would have cut him. He had nothing on him. There was nothing that he could, like, there was no glass, there was no steel, like he just bled out, and they presume he just bit himself hard enough to rip. It sounds shady. His death sounds really, really
Yeah.
shady.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's these
Yes.
words.
The sheriff's
I'm
like,
reading,
boy.
yeah, I'm reading this Daily Mail article, and it has like it interviewed one of his friends, and the quotes that it highlights are really funny. Like the friend says, "It seems obvious now that he had mental health issues." Yep,
Yeah, you
good
think
job.
you
Does seem obvious now.
if you just look at the house, you could tell that that person has. You don't even have to meet the guy. Just look at his house.
It's so funny that like you're not even mentioning the Satanist stuff, but like because that's like he was just doing it to be like
Edgy.
edgy. But yeah, like the article is like disturbing video of a Satanist home, and you're like, well, whatever. It's just like a dirty house with like I do see the swastika on the ceiling. That is definitely bad.
But like I think that the Satan stuff is just like what I mean. Look, like we've all met these people where they're
Hmm.
such the devil's real, and it's this, and like they look at this guy and they just, who gives a shit? People can believe whatever they want to believe in. It's just like this guy acted on things that were derivative of schizophrenia and acid and meth consumption. Like
Hmm.
he probably would have done this if he didn't believe in Satan, didn't have a Satan tattoo, and like didn't have his
Yeah,
face
that has nothing
tattoos.
to do
Like,
with it. Yeah,
yeah.
this is not he's not doing great.
But that's why so much of the story was like obfuscated. It was hard to actually fully understand what really happened and what the motivations were. Like I dug so deep to try and figure out what the motivations were. There's
Hmm.
three things, three details that should be obvious that are not obvious. One, why did he do it in the first place?
Yeah,
If we could ever find that out, why did the police finally decide to execute on that search warrant when Dixie came forward instead of the previous three confessions of people that came forward and gave details of what happened to these people? And then, oh man, I forgot what the third one was. Okay, I forgot what the third thing was. Oh, his death. Like why?
Right.
Like how do we not have more details about what happened to his death? But it all gets obfuscated. It's like crazy Satanist did this thing. It's like guys, like
No, it was just
get a
like
grip.
mentally, you know, yeah, that's crazy. That, I mean, it sounds like what a place to like be when like there's, tons of drugs and
Yeah,
people just like, I don't know. That's crazy.
yeah.
And yeah, and why? I don't even think about that. Like, why are those two guys dead? It sounds like there's no good reason. Not that there's ever a good reason to kill someone, but like, why did he kill them? It doesn't really say anything. Or why did she, or if she did it.
It kind of seems like that Joshua guy was like kind of like a homeless moocher,
Hmm.
but like you look at Crazy Dave and he looks like a homeless moocher too. They all look like homeless moochers. They all look like garbage, fucking trash people. Like, so, but I mean, that could have been a
Crazy
part of it.
Dave.
Crazy Dave, this guy. But there's
Like,
a Vice did a great piece on this story that's worth looking at because they interview a lot more people involved in the case, and you get a sense of who was drawn to him, you know. So
hmm
that's it.
wow.
That's it. That's my story. Don't follow a white guy with dreadlocks and face tattoos with sharpened teeth to his house. Don't hang out
No,
with him. Unfriend him on
no,
Facebook.
yeah. Or like, be like, hey man, get your shit together and then give me a call.
Yeah, no, don't listen to Taylor. There's no help for these people.
You could be a little, you can, figure something out. Cool. Well, thank you. I had not heard of that. I can't believe I haven't
Pazuzu
heard of that.
Algarad.
That's quite a thing.
Yeah.
What's his name before again?
John Alexander Lawson.
Hmm. That's a nice name.
Yeah, yeah. He looked like a normal kid. You look at his childhood pictures, like it was,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
whatever is what it is. He's dead now.
Yeah. He chewed himself to death, maybe.
Maybe. We don't
Was his
know.
mouth full of blood? I have more questions. Um, that's gross.
Well, I
Okay.
looked at the autopsy report too. The autopsy report, I don't know why they would do this, but they actually like drew his tattoos on
I
the
did see that. I
autopsy
did. So I
report.
did. He'd have the swastika on his leg. I saw that.
And it sounded like he had
I
more
think you have to
wounds
do
than
that.
just like one. Maybe you have
So
to do that.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't
So
know. And then it also sounds like, I guess to your second question, like it sounds like finally when Dixie went and was like, they're literally right here pointing to the spot, they were like, fine.
fine, we'll go
Like,
look.
can we do the least amount of work humanly possible? Fine. I guess we have to now,
Which like further shows the corruption of like the
Yeah.
prosecution, the
They
state,
probably were
along
just like,
with.
we don't care. For like some of the same things that like, you're saying, like these people are garbage people, who cares? Maybe, you know?
So you're saying I'm more like the prosecution in this case?
I don't know. I'm just saying it sounds a little bit like
That's fair. That's fair. I mean,
that. It's a stereotype. We're talking stereotypes.
that's true.
Nothing could possibly go wrong.
God, what's happened to me?
All right, I'm gonna go to mine.
Let's hear it.
All right.
I forgot what you're
So,
drinking already.
oh, like a watery ale instead of water.
Cool.
Okay. So, to transition over to history, this story and next week's story are like an attempt to somehow talk about America and like how it got so weird. Like it's always been weird, but like now things are really bad, like good versus evil, bad. So, for this one, my cousin Oh yeah, actually, okay. This is like the origins of some of our stereotypes is actually also what I'm talking about as well. So I'm also put the word stereotype in my notes too. So talking about stereotypes in a different way. My cousin Lindsay, who's the smartest of my cousins, suggested this, and also her birthday was yesterday. So happy birthday, Lindsay. You're the best. And I also wrote this very, very late last night, and I wrote in all caps, highlighted, warning, this story contains 843 tangents. So there's a lot of tangents in here. This is kind of a rolling story. It's like story time with Taylor, what's happening right now. So come back with me in time to the 1600s. Someday, I might talk about the Salem witch trials. It's not today. They happened like 50 years or so after the story we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to talk about Thomas Morton and William Bradford. One's fun and one is not fun. And they sort of represented two different Americas. And Lindsay, my cousin, called them that they remind her of a Harry and a Draco, which I think totally makes sense. Like one's fun, one's not fun.
What's
So very fair.
Draco?
From Harry Potter, Draco the Bad.
Oh, Draco Malfoy. Got it.
Yeah. So I also like to introduce a new segment to the show. It is called I already have children and I will have no more. Here are some names I forgot to consider when I was having them, and I give them to you. You're welcome. Are you excited?
Let's. I. I'll
So
tell you offline why I'm not, but go ahead.
two two names that I forgot to name my children from the Salem witch trials are Cotton and Increase from the who are the Mathers who are part of the Salem witch trials. I just like love those names so much, and they're just like so weird. They're both bananas. Like Cotton is like not a name, and Increase is like a verb. I just love
It,
it's
it only works because of the Mathers part.
it's so great.
Cotton
Mather,
Mather. Is it
yeah, Mathers,
Mathers?
yeah,
Matchers?
Mathers, Mathers.
Yeah, yeah, Mathers. Yeah, Mathers.
Yeah.
Mathers. Say it
So
so many times it stops making sense.
So I have two places to start for some context. One, Salem, which is we'll talk a little bit about that, and then the whole area of like Massachusetts in this time. Like this is like the beginning of English people coming over to America. So I'll start with Salem, even though it's not what we're talking about. We'll talk about it a little bit because it's something that like we learn in America very early. Like we learn this story like really early in school. We love it. It's like super fun. We watch the movie or a play of The Crucible. We think about how cool it is. You know, like I know, like I don't know, being a teenage girl in America, I feel like you think about this all the time when you're like in that time. We also hear that maybe it's like ergot, the fungus that can make you crazy, and it wasn't. Some people might think it was God, it wasn't. But the feeling that I get, that I empathize with the Salem witch trials, is the feeling of like being a teen girl and being like, won't something cool happen ever? Could something cool happen? Could something have happened to these girls? Like, couldn't something cool happen? But the answer is no, like, not this doesn't happen. And I remember like thinking about the Salem witch trials and like this period of time a couple years ago, there was a new book written about it, and I was really excited about it. And it came out, but it was awful. Like, it was like unreadable. It was like really bad. So if you do want to read anything about it, read the Shirley Jackson kind of short essay on it. But essentially, just to like put some context around Puritans and the Salem witch trials, what happened then is Puritans are boring. They suck. Life is hard. And they make it 100 times harder by being boring and mean. So the girls were told again and again that they had no purpose. They were lonely. They were bored. They had no future. They saw women who were widowed begging door to door. They saw old women alone and dirty, poor and hungry. They didn't want that. They just like wanted something to happen. And if you just pray all day, nothing happens because that's not real. So they felt disappointed and betrayed by life. So they made shit up. They wanted to be touched. They wanted to be noticed. They wanted to do something that moved any needle before they were expected to be married and have 45 babies and die in childbirth. Like that's what happened, but it's still fun to talk about it and think about how crazy everyone got, like the crazy mass hysteria, and so many people died.
You don't think ergot had anything to do with it?
No. There would have been other things that happened as well. It was not like a one symptom thing. It's something like other things would have happened that did not happen, so it was not that.
Okay.
It was just girls needing attention. But yeah, but it's still fun. Like I still love thinking about it. I think it's a great story, a great piece of our history. Um, And then thinking about, so there's like that is in the background, like people believe in witches, they believe in all this stuff. Massachusetts, and they say this in the last podcast when they talk about the Salem witch trials, but like Massachusetts is creepy in like the woods and the dark. You know, have you been there? Like in like a big northeastern woods?
So I haven't been there, but I remember we discussed it. I forgot which case it was. Maybe it was the Murdoch case where I discussed like the opposite of Southern Gothic is American Gothic, which is
Yeah,
like the northern version of that, which is awesome. Like I think I love that aesthetic.
me too. It's really creepy. It's cool. Like the did you see The Witch, that movie?
I did.
Yeah, so like picture like that. Like I love the part in like the very beginning when they're leaving the like the settlement and the gates are closing and you just see like everyone's covered in mud and it's raining and there's like a Native American who walks by and everyone just looks miserable. So like that's like kind of happening. I remember in time in high school, like I went to Massachusetts with some friends and we saw the Blair Witch Project and like lost our minds. And then like we went to our friend's house and these dudes were like telling a ghost story about the woods and like I thought I was going to die. Like I screamed for hours. It was like super fun and like that's what like the woods are scary. So we're in like a scary time. It's I wanted to like wear all black and a witch's hat, but my headphones wouldn't work with that, so I didn't do it. But
Fair.
it's witchy. We're witchy in a fun way. So I also want to mention that every Thanksgiving I like to yell about how the Puritans left England because they sucked. Like we were told in America in school that they left for religious freedom, and at least when I was little, I assumed that that meant, or I was told, or I believed that it meant you could be whatever religion you want, and America was a melting pot and it was awesome. I don't feel like that's with what
That's
they're doing at
definitely not
all.
it.
And that's not what's happening today either. We know it's not true. It's just Christians who want to be the only religion.
Yeah.
So blah blah blah. So that's the place that we're in. It's dark and creepy. We're about to hit the witch trials in like a few decades. So people are like they're very very Puritan at the moment. Here's this relationship that helps really shape the American story of like two different Americas. So we're in the early 1600s. There's Thomas Morton. He's the fun one. He was a lawyer and a trader who arrived in 1624 from England. He settled in an area called Marymount and established a trading post there. He was free thinking. He supported Native American rights, which put him at odds with some of the Puritans. So he was born in 1579 in Devonshire, England. He went to Oxford. He sailed to Newfoundland in 1612 as to start a fishing colony, and he moved to Plymouth where he became a fur trader in like 1613. So he had his own by the 1620s. He has his own little village, like he's not like in charge of, but he lives there called Marymount, and as fun there as it can be in this time to live, if that makes sense.
So dire and grim and awful.
Yes,
Got it.
yes. In 1625, he wrote a book called New English Canon that described his experiences in America and criticized the Puritans for like being intolerant because they are. They are. So the other person in the story, William Bradford, he's not fun. He was a leader of the Plymouth colony. He was a governor of Plymouth for like 30 years, which is like the famous one. And someone might say like, oh, that's the, good American values, but like, no, he was pretty awful. And he's also very much a Slytherin. Like there's lots of capes and he's not any fun.
I mean, you're kind of describing a pretty cool guy, though.
I mean, he's not fun though.
I know, but
But
I would like to wear a cape and
I 100% support capes. You can definitely do that.
okay.
So just some facts, some numbers about William Bradford. He was born in 1590 in Austerfield, England. He became part of the separatist movement, which ties back to England being with the Church of England. He thought that was corrupt, which we know it is. It was because it was made for King Henry VIII to be able to divorce and kill his wives. But Bradford, this is cool. So he escaped to Holland to escape religious persecution. So this is part of the American story that we hear where like the Puritans are being persecuted in England and they had to leave. So they went via Holland and he ended up sailing to America on what's the most famous ship that sailed to America?
The Mayflower, Santa Maria.
The Mayflower.
Okay.
He flew. I said it again. He sailed over on the Mayflower.
Wait, there was
Which
three, right?
cool.
Was the
No, that was
Mayflower?
no, you're thinking the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Those are Christopher Columbus's.
So ridiculous.
Um, Farz, you were born in England.
Better.
So so he came on the Mayflower, which is cool. He was the governor of Plymouth, which is like the famous colony. He had a common course system, so like there was like communal farming and property ownership, which sounds a little socialist, but he, was kind of like a stern ruler of Plymouth. So he and William Bradford didn't get along from the start, and in 1627, he goes over and arrests Morton and dismantles his trading post because he didn't like what he was doing. So they're like two like kind of rival towns like living next to each other. So here's the year where the big fun versus not fun battle happens between these two. So in 1628, there's a May Day celebration. Do you know what May Day is?
That was a Canadian thing. Is that when their prime minister is born? I make that up. Do we not celebrate Justin Trudeau's birthday?
I totally, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we don't celebrate the current president's birthday. Maybe they have a prime minister day. I have no idea. Canadians, let us know. So May Day is now a holiday for workers' rights, but it's in pre-Christian Europe, so a long time ago. It was the beginning of summer and fertility, a time for feasting and dancing. Winter sucks, and I feel this, like you just want to be happy and have it be warm finally. So have you ever seen a maypole? It's like a tall wooden pole and you do like a dance around it. Like, did you ever see
Where would I see this? Like, in what
like
situation would I be exposed to
did
this?
you see Midsummer?
Yeah.
So like they do it in there, I think. So it's like a big pole and you have like ribbons and then you like do a dance around it and as you do the dance, the ribbons tie on the pole. It's very pretty.
Okay.
So it's like a spring festival. And then of course like Christians were like, make it about Jesus. So it became about like devotion and prayer. There's the May Queen, which is like what Florence Pugh was in Midsummer. And so I don't know. I wrote this very late last night, but I wrote, have you read any books or seen Midsummer to anyone? So just like that's what we're looking at.
Hey, Taylor, can I interrupt you for a
Yeah.
sec? Do you think that maybe it's a good idea if you put that jug of milk behind you in the fridge instead of letting it sit outside by the window?
It's not milk. Could you imagine? It's first of all, it says distilled water. It's my mom's ironing water.
I see. Okay, just checking.
Why would I just have a gallon of milk in here?
I thought maybe you forgot and you can't see it, but I can, so
Oh my God, what if I was just like drinking a glass of milk?
it's almost as gross as rabbit's blood.
It is. I can imagine. It's gross. Okay, so it's 1628. It's May. We can assume the winter's been awful. Morton, the fun guy, and his followers celebrate May Day with like a huge party. There's drinking, dancing, merrymaking. This is a quote that was on Wikipedia. It says they set up a maypole, drinking and dancing about it many days together, inviting the Indian women for their consorts, not right, dancing and frisking together, like so many fairies or furies rather, and worse practices, as if they had anew revived and celebrated the feasts of ye Roman Gladys Flora, or ye beastly practices of ye mad. Oh my God, I can't even pronounce it. Bacchus, like the god, you know. Anyway, it was rowdy.
Bacchus is that's the god
Of wine,
of
you know.
wine. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like wine, a lot of drinking, a lot of just like sex and not Puritan things. So it sounds super fun. And there's always like something in history that would be fun to like go back to. This feels something that's like not known as well as like, going to like a big battle or something. But I think it'd be super fun to go back to and be like, this party is super fun. It's like, you know,
Yeah, it would be
and
like Coachella when we're in Palm Springs.
it'll be just kind of almost exactly like that. So imagine
Yeah.
that with like Puritans staring at them, which is exactly what's happening in America right now. So yes. And I also like love, well, I was thinking about like, what if I was there? Like, what would it be like? And also wanted to, if I haven't told you before, when we did one Christmas in Colonial Williamsburg, and it was awesome. And like, I love like doing immersive history. There were a lot of capes, and they had like these activities, and like went to like a ball and learned this like dance, this like line dance or whatever. And I was dancing with someone, like some like actor, and he was like, "Did you hear that Washington is going to speak later today in the town square?" And I was like,
That is
"Oh,
so
really?" It's
fun.
fucking so fun.
That is so fun. One thing we never talked about is when I was a kid, I used to love going to Civil War reenactments. Those are my favorite thing because they would go so in detail. Like they would have like the little shitty tents, and there'd be like a pot of stew over a fire, and it was
I
just
love
so
it.
much. Yeah, it was really good.
That's so fun. I remember in Brooklyn, they do like a reenactment of like a Revolutionary War fight. And I like met someone that was dressed like Benjamin Franklin. That's my picture in our Slack is me and the Benjamin Franklin because I was so excited. I was like, this is awesome. It's just like weird old man, but I was like, this is so fun.
Oh my
Um,
God, that is Benjamin Franklin.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was very, very fun. So they're so mad about this over in Plymouth that they go over and they arrest Morton for having this big party, and they give him a trial, and they're going to send him back to England. But instead of like giving him a ticket back to England, they just maroon him on an island and wait for someone to pick him up, which is
That'd be fun.
what you
I
do,
mean, if you have an axe with you and like some survival tools and water, that'd be
I
cool.
guess. But he did get picked up and he went back to England. And then the colony, the community of Marymount lasted about a year without Morton, but then it collapsed without him as like kind of their leader. So the Puritans kind of took over and like they kind of took over for the rest of the land. So I'll tell you a little bit more about what happened to them later, but really what this is like this is a story of we've barely English people have barely even been here for like a couple years, and they're already this huge clash between like the old world and the new world. So there's like a new world where we're maybe going to be more free and be more creative and like more not so strict and religious, and then there's this old world that the Puritans are trying to replicate in the new world. But the whole thing is like the old world never existed. Like there is no like perfect Puritan world, and so they're trying to do that, and like nothing nostalgic is true. So it's like kind of a whatever, they're trying to do something that was like almost impossible, which is why there's like so much conflict. So there's like this is like a story of the conflict between individuality and being more diverse and more tolerant, and then not being like really religious.
Well, that's I think that's like our interpretation of it. So what was the actual, what did they think they were fighting about?
They were fighting about this big party and being like not being as religious as them.
That's it.
Yeah. They were offended by the party. They called it ungodly.
Okay. That's kind of, yeah. That's like you just didn't get invited. That's the problem. Your problem
I
is you
think,
didn't get invited.
it's a good point. It's a really
Also,
good
every
point.
I just my shoes just squeaked on the mat underneath my feet. That was not a fart. Just so everybody's clear. If that did pick up in the mic, which I don't know if it did, I'm just gonna flag that so everybody knows.
That's so funny. So yeah, so you can just like use this story as like a manifestation of that old versus new, super religious versus a little more lax, like still religious, but like not as like strict and Puritan, which is like a word we use as, an adjective. So, Morton was the New World, individualism, tolerance, freedom. Bradford was old world, religion, social hierarchy, conformity. So in 1628, Morton does go back to England. He returns a year later and they arrest him again because they're like, we told you to leave. They like found him somehow. It's 1629, like go anywhere else. But they kicked him out of Massachusetts, so he could never go back to Massachusetts again. And then he ends up going back to England and coming back and trying to make a colony in Maine. So Morton goes back and forth a few more times, a couple failed ventures. He either died, I got two conflicting stories. One said he died in England at 64, another said he died in Maine when he was 71. So either way, he never went back to Massachusetts and didn't really have contact with the Puritans again. And Bradford died in 1644, which is about 40 years before the Salem witch trials in Plymouth at the age of 67. So he just continued to like be the leader of Plymouth and continue to have it be really strict, which as we see with Salem, continued to be kind of the way that people acted and lived in that part of the colonies for a long time after. I think
What's
that's
the
it.
stereotype?
I think it's a stereotype of like a not fun, really strict religious that like I am really like offended by, And then I think maybe the other way they could see a stereotype of like someone who is having being like a little bit more fun, being like ungodly and maybe like of the devil, which is like where we get to kind of like later with witches and stuff. Like if you're not doing exactly what I tell you to do and conforming, then like you must be in league with the devil.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if it's like an Austin thing necessarily. I don't think I was really exposed to it much in LA. So it's been mostly here where the whole like witchy vibe that some women have here, it's like awesome. Like I love that whole
It's so
like
fun.
it's so
Yeah.
fun.
Oh my God, I love it.
I mean, I told you all those crystals and all the stuff that I keep buying. Those are all these witches markets. Like they call them witches markets, and you
I
go
love it.
there, and it's just yeah, it's just a bunch of groovy people just living their life, and like it's. I think that some of them do like believe the stuff that they say, but in large part, it's like having a Ren fair. It's like they just want to have a good time
Yeah,
and pretend like they're in old timey, moments, and this
for
sage is
real.
gonna ward off evil, and it's
I
like
love it.
let them have
Who
fun.
cares? See, that's like with like that has whatever. Yeah, if you want to like burn sage in your house or if you want to pray to make things better, I don't give a shit. My problem is when you ruin other people's lives because of your beliefs, you
Yeah,
know? Like, and I think like witches, like your Austin witchy ladies, like they're not ruining anybody's life. They're just burning some herbs. And
yeah.
like I had like everyone, I had 45 mental breakdowns during 2020, and I did buy some spell books. I was like, I'm gonna start burying stuff in the backyard and like protecting my house and like doing these things. And like that seems fun, like why not?
I'm gonna I'm gonna hold on, I'm gonna look this up real quick because I can't remember it off the top of my head. I did get a book that was absolutely disgusting that you should look at because it was free. Um, books and reading. This is the least used part of my Amazon account. Okay, so damn, where's it?
This is the silent part of the episode. If there's any Puritan names that you wish you'd name your children, please give us an email at doomedtofellapod@gmail.com. I've already called Cotton an increase, but there's got to be more. Goody? Do you want to put the word goody in front of your daughter's name? Have you thought about that? Send me an email. I've thought about it. We should talk about it more.
This drive me nuts. Why I can't find this? There's a book that I got. It was Aleister Crowley's son who became like a super lame version of Aleister Crowley himself on all these books of spells that you could do, and they were like disgusting. It was, let's just say, there was a lot of like leaving bodily fluids out in the open. So much of it was that. It was just like this guy, like
like male bodily fluids.
Yeah, we can say
like,
that.
Or, oh yeah.
Like it was. If I wasn't positive that he believed in the things that he was saying, it sounded like recipe books for Pazuzu Algarad. Like it was
exactly.
it was really, really bad.
It's so funny. Yeah, I think our stories are super similar because I think we're in like creepy, like East Coast woods, and people are just like, whether or not like Pazuzu's schizophrenia had something to do with it, which I assume that it did. Like, it's that idea of being like, when will something happen? You know, like,
Yeah.
when will something happen to me? And then like, I have this terrible childhood, and like, I want something to happen. Let me be provocative with this. And then like, in colonial America, some people are like, maybe we finally have the chance to make something happen, to like do something different, and to like have some free thought. And the Puritans are like, no, that's not why we're here. And then I just think it's a more I think about it, the more like of a big deal it is, of a larger problem, thinking that like when I was younger, I definitely was told like, we're here because people wanted to practice whatever religion they wanted, and we wanted to be, you could be whatever you wanted in America, and that's not true, you know, and like that was never true. But like, I don't know why I thought about that for a while. Come here, my daughter just came in. Look what she has.
Flo, hi Flo.
Where'd you get that? Did Stratton make
Is
it?
that a lion? What is that?
How do you make it? Oh, there's like a park next to my mom's house, and there was a clown, I guess, and so Florence got a. Well, who made that then? A balloon person.
I'd rather that than a clown. There's a lot of finger pointing happening off screen.
Very cool. Cool. Balloon animal break.
Very cool.
Very, very, but you know what I mean? I feel like you can cut that out, but you know what I mean? I think it's like, and now we're in this time in America today where there's this like Christian right movement that's like trying to destroy public schools and destroy publicly funded things so that everybody has to pay to go to a Christian school so they can pick out what books people read. And like, just why?
I'm so glad I don't have to pay attention to any of this stuff. I just live in my little bubble.
You cannot live in your bubble. You live in America. You're going to find that something bad's going to happen to you because you're not paying attention to everybody else.
Just tell me what to vote for. I don't like, you tell me. I don't want to pay attention to politics anymore. I don't want to pay attention to what's going on in the world. Just you tell me what to do.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Someone tells me I'm gonna get kicked out of Texas, but sure.
As my first thought was you should move out of Texas, but
okay,
we'll talk about that later.
I'm surprised you haven't convinced Blair.
I'm gonna wait, Blair. Sorry, I'm gonna wait until you're past having an infant, but we should talk about raising a daughter in Texas. I'm sure you've thought about it. Blair's very smart. She knows.
Tried to do the math.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll go ahead and pause the recording. Thank you everyone for listening. And
yeah, thank you for the suggestion, Lindsay, for this, and thanks everyone who's sent us things. Super cool.
Absolutely. And I'll subscribe, all the things.
Mm-hmm. Apple Podcasts. YouTube has a lot of views, which is super cool. We got a comment, but it was from an account called Buy YouTube Followers, and I was like, well, I'm not going to buy YouTube followers, but thank you for your
interest.
Comment.
That was my dog shaking and her collar ringing. That was not me making that sound just now.
Yeah, find us on Instagram and follow us and share us in your stories. And please, thank you for listening.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks, Taylor. Bye.